Hello, I am joined today by Joanna Borrett to talk all things cello and her very exciting new book, Folk and Beyond. Thank you for joining me.
It's a pleasure to be here.
We're very excited about the new book. Joanna's a new composer to Kevin Mayhew, so we're also very excited to have you as part of the team.
Thank you.
Could you tell us a little bit about the book and your inspiration behind it? Do you come from a classical background or a folk background? How did you get into this?
I come from a classical background. I started learning cello at 10 and piano at 7. I had parents who, luckily, they weren't professional musicians, but they really did love the arts. So they introduced me to the arts at an early age, not just music, but also art galleries, theatre, opera, which is really lucky. Yeah. And so I started learning piano, as I said, at 7 and cello at 10. And I always loved the sound of the cello. And then I went to music school at 14. So then I sort of really specialised in practising. And so that is where my main background is. But having said that, I do also love folk. And more recently, I have become increasingly sort of frustrated by some of the training in classical music. The fact that you're never taught to improvise and you're never taught to play by ear. Yeah. And so I've tried to combine the two different styles. I was very impressed by going to a folk concert a few years ago by even the way they laid out the chairs, which instead of the sort of very formal thing, it was sort of like in little groups with little tables round them, and how much the players really enjoy and are at ease with their instrument. So I've tried to combine some of that in this book.
And so how would you use the book? Can you dip in and out? What kind of level is it for? How do you see it working?
It starts at around grade 4 and 5 and it goes up to about grades 7 to 8 with quite a lot in between. I think one of the things I'd like to encourage players to do is really make the music their own, interpret it, because I think probably the most exciting thing for me in music is interpretation. So coming up with your own ideas, deciding on your own dynamics and bowings. And some of the things I've used in the book, col legno, playing on the wood of the cello, of the bow, tapping the instrument, stamping, playing on the bridge, some different types of pizzicato, they're to try and give them a sense of freedom. And really, I wouldn't mind if people added their own extra things as well. I sort of feel like I'm really happy for people to look at the music, decide what they think it's about, and then do their own thing with it.
Yeah, and sort of use it as a starting point.
Yeah.
And I know you're an examiner as well, aren't you? So
used to be, yeah. I was for 24 years, yeah.
So did you get a little bit of inspiration from kind of the way exams were done and things like that? Was there any?
Well, I think just again that's one of my strongest influences in folk was listening to the singing exams, which were always my favourite ones, and they have an unaccompanied traditional folk song at the end, which I used to absolutely love. So the candidate just stands in front of the piano and then sings their heart out and tells a story with folk song, and that's just so great. And so that's been one of my inspirations.
Yeah, that sounds amazing and terrifying at the same time.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
But hopefully this book will take the terrifying away, because it's a great starting point.
Yeah, I would like to cellists, just the average cellist, to be able to develop a bit more of that sense of freedom that you do see folk players have. Because for me, I suppose, if I really think of over my whole life and all the many, many, many concerts I've been to with some of the absolute top players in the whole world, the concerts that I really remember and that really move me are not the ones with the really technically best playing. There's two I remember, and one was actually at a summer school where it was two little kids playing a Vivaldi concerto, and it was being conducted by a fantastic violinist conductor called Manuel Hurwitz. And the kids couldn't really play their instruments very well at all, but he was conducting it so creatively and so imaginatively. It just brought the whole thing to life, and it just gave me this really wonderful and exciting feeling. And I suppose another memory that I have that's really strongest is when I was examining, and it was a grade 8 piano candidate, And he was obviously very enthusiastic about piano and playing well, but not brilliantly.
Yeah.
And then the last piece, which was a Rachmaninoff piece, and I think it was called Elegy, and you could see him gather himself together and then just put his whole heart into it.
He didn't have to think about it almost.
No,
He just...
and it wasn't faultless. There were mistakes, but it didn't really matter because it was that sense of communication.
Yeah,
so,
the emotive rather than...
Yeah. To me, that's just me. But I think I would always rather go for a strong sense of communication and feeling than perfection or blandness. Yeah.
So I know you mentioned that you started playing the piano at 7, did you say, and the cello at 10. So you've always had a strong musical ability, I guess. It takes a lot of dedication.
Yeah, I did really love playing the piano and the cello, and I did love practicing. And with piano, I think even with Czerny studies and things, I was always make up a little story about the music in my head. And it used to bother me even at primary school, if I couldn't get a bit right, I'd be thinking in my head, oh, what did I do? How can I do? So I think, something about it resonated with me quite early on, yes.
Yeah, and then you went to music school at 14,
yeah, so that's when I started practicing more seriously and on the cello, and I had a very inspiring cello teacher, Christopher Bunting, and so then I really did start to practice a lot, which you do need to do really if you're going to be professional.
Yeah. So did you go away? Did you sort of leave home and go away to music school, or was it just
No. I come from North London, and it was at the time it was the Purcell School, but at the time that was just a small school, 50 pupils in a house in Hampstead. So I just used to get the bus and the tube in with the cello. So it would definitely go away. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So you built up strong muscles from an early age. Do you ever think, why didn't I just choose the violin? It's so much lighter.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. I didn't really start out wanting to play the cello. I started out wanting to play the harp, actually. And then my parents, who weren't not very well off, they just said, well, it's the thing is, we've got one small car, we can't possibly carry a harp around. What about trying the cello, because it's also quite big. But it's not too big. It's easier to, in the car. So I did, and then the first lesson I do remember just hearing the open strings and realising you could play the open strings and how much I loved it. And just
so you haven't looked back with sadness at the harp?
No, not really. No, because I think you've got so much more repertoire on the cello. I still love the harp, but I think you've got all the orchestral and the chamber and the solo repertoire. Yeah. So yeah. And
you've had a fairly busy career, I think, from what I know. You've sort of travelled and done all sorts of different things and recorded, and I know you've published a few other
I've published a couple of other things, but I've really only gone into actual composition quite recently. I used to be in a violin and cello group with a violinist called Roger Stimpson, who sadly died recently. And that's really how I got into the whole idea of doing any type of composing or arranging, because Roger used to write all our arrangements. And then he got me involved, and I immediately started coming up with ideas like, let's do an introduction here, or let's put the cello up an octave, or let's give the cello, or let's do a counter melody. And started to realise I really liked it. And then Roger insisted I got a Finale print, this computer system you can compose on. We had great time sort of making up these arrangements and trying different techniques out. And then that gradually led to thinking, well, actually, maybe I can write a tune myself. And so it's only fairly recently that I've actually composed. But I did I've had some arrangements published by a company called SJ Music about 4 years ago. Those were opera arrangements, they're for cello duet. And then in September, UMP, United Music Publishers, they published 3 volumes of cello duets that I wrote. That's my first, so it's fairly recently I've sent anything off to publishers, just in the summer actually. So you took yourself by surprise that you didn't a bit. A bit. I'm very pleased, but having had some stuff published, I've really fallen in love with the whole process.
And you've done some recording as well, haven't you, with the...
Yes, I've recorded the pieces in Folk and Beyond.
And they're going to be coming out on CD soon, I believe.
Okay, that's great.
So we briefly touched upon the fact that there's going to be a CD of the music, but there's also on the Kevin Mayhew website, you can download and listen to all the tracks that are in the book, so you can get a really nice feeling for them, and you can also play along, which I think is probably quite a nice place. And I suppose you can improvise.
Yeah, if you want to. And again, it's it's my performance of them, but you can take them at different speeds. It's entirely up to you. Yeah, but I think that really helps give an idea of what the music's like. Yes.
So if you want to get your hands on a copy of Folk and Beyond, the new classical folk cello book from Joanna, it is available from all good music shops, kevinmayhew.com, musicroom.com, and Amazon. So thank you so much for joining me.
It's been a pleasure.
We're very excited about the new book, and I can't wait to see any future projects that we might do.
Thank you.